Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Life Chronicles and Deep Dives podcast. I'm here with Coach Cornelia, all the way in Romania.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back.
And my name is Coach Micah Ranjit, and today we're going to be talking about teenagers. What do teenagers need? What about them? And we're going to learn all about teenagers today. Coach Cornelia has a program specifically designed for teenagers, and she works with them on a regular basis. Cornelia, tell us about your program.
Yeah, thank you, Micah. Yes, I have one program called the Rising Stars, which wants to empower the teenagers, but also the parents, because being a teenager is like you're a different species for yourself and for your parents. So I'm doing this program twice a year, once in at the end of May, and the other one is a summer camp, so it's only in August. And we are working for 10 weeks in this program, and we are helping the teenagers to get self-awareness, self-confidence, learn a few things about where they want to go in life, how they want to be seen in life. And we're ending this with setting goals and achieving them step by step.
Awesome. That sounds like a great program, especially for teenagers because they're all over the place. Talk to me about, is it difficult working with teenagers? Are they rebellious? Because like typically they're rebellious with their parents, but if they find somebody that they connect with, they can be open. So tell me about working with them. How is that?
I mean, I always want to be for the teenagers to be rebellious. I prefer to work with those ones. They are very interesting. And I think it is very important for them to find adults with empathy. That's the most important for them, because they are going through huge changes from 11 years old until they go to 18 years old maybe. So it's a very long period of changes, and for them it's very, very hard. So the first thing you can come up with is empathy. It's very important for teenagers to find someone that gives them empathy and understands them, and understand their rebellions. We've been teenagers ourselves, and we know how it feels like. And another part of the program is very important, that I'm working with the parents as well, because it's a very big change for the parents too. And for them, it's a huge relief, believe it or not, to know that all the parents of teenagers are going through the same thing, right? They are not the only ones. And understanding this, bringing some empathy, you can help even the most rebellious teenagers find their way.
Yeah. So most teenagers are looking to be understood, and it sounds like that's what you're bringing to the table. So again, walk me through from the beginning to the end of your program. Like, how does it work? Like, what do they need when they show up, and what do they leave with at the end of your program?
Right. So I'm only working in groups. So we are starting with what's the first and most important thing for a teenager? To find their identity, right? That's what
Right.
they're trying to see who they are. So that's why what we are trying to do in the program. In group, it's much easier because they can socialize. They feel more relaxed
Oh yeah.
yeah, rather than when it's one-on-one with me, for example. They're not that when let's say we're working in a group, right, and someone
Right.
says something funny, and the other ones are laughing, and in that moment you can say it's a more relaxed, less tension in the session, right? So this is why I prefer to work in groups. um so that's the first part, to try to see who they are, what it's their definition as persons. It's very important for them to identify and to see who they really are. The next step, what is self-confidence and how to gain it. We've been talking about it in our podcast as well. So that's another thing, because the teenagers are very scared of who they really are. They are ashamed. They are afraid of criticism. They don't know which group would they belong to, and it's very important for them to gain this self-confidence. So after the self-confidence program, we go to the next one, which is communication skill. All the teenagers want to belong to a group. They want to socialize, so they need this communication skills so they can make good relationships. So again, we are playing a lot in these sessions as well, and it's very easy being in a group where you can play roles. So that's what we are doing. We are playing roles. And of course, after the communication skills, we are for a week we are talking about how stress affects us. For me, it's a very important topic, because being less stressed, you can be much more responsive to the space around you. The teenagers are very stressed regarding anything you can think about. So this is why I'm working a lot on the stress part with them. And then we are working on practical things. We speak about goal setting, and we are setting goals for them. They are setting their goals. I'm just supporting them. We speak about time management, financial management, and happiness, my favorite topic.
So they go through all of this and they walk away with a whole new identity. They or like a built identity. They walk away with confidence. They walk away with valuable skills that they'll be able to carry forward into adulthood or young adulthood. Um, Talk to me about working with the parents, right? So teenagers are known for being rebellious. They shut down, they run away. Not
Mm,
all of them, but a lot of them, they do kind of like have this what are they, antagonistic personality style as they're trying to like we've talked about this on the podcast. They don't like to be put into a box, but they don't know where they want to be either. So they're kind of like, it's like a little kid. If you had like 10 boxes on the floor, right? And the kid is running to each of the boxes. But as soon as you ask the kid if they like what's in that box, they say no, and they run away and they run to a different box to look in it to see if that's something that they like. And then you ask them again, hey, is that something you like? They're like, no, and then they run to a different box, and then that just repeats
yeah.
until they, pick a box. So tell me about the parents. The parents have to deal with this teenager lifestyle growing up. So talk to me about that.
Right. It's very hard for both the teenagers and the parents, of course. And for the parents, it's like overnight they want to sleep with a princess, let's say, and they woke up with a monster, a little monster. That's how it feels for real. So as you said, they shut down. They don't like you anymore as a parent. They are always finding mistakes that you are doing as a parent. They don't want to talk about anything. They're always depressed, sad. They hate life. They hate everything and everyone, right? And the parents are asking themselves, where is my kid? I lost my kid. And that's where I'm trying to work with them. And as I was saying at the beginning, it's very important for the parents to understand that all the parents of teenagers are going through the same thing mostly. It's not a situation that just occurs in their house. It's everywhere. So when you realize this, you know that that's it's normal. And the second thing that I'm saying is it's gonna be over one day. Not very soon. It's gonna last a few years. It depends on the teenager, but it's gonna end, and you're gonna have a great kid again if you know how to deal with the situation. Because the parents are gonna start to feel guilty, are gonna get angry, and maybe not understand what's happening to their kid. The kid is getting frustrated because he's not understood, and it's a circle that keeps going and going and going. It's very hard for the parents and for the teenagers. And the main problem, in my opinion, is that sorry. The main problem, is my opinion, is that every single thing the teenager is doing comes from an emotional gap. So imagine a baby who's drinking milk from the bottle, and you're taking the bottle from the baby, and he's not well fed. He didn't have enough, and the baby will start crying. But if he's well fed and you show him a small toy, a little bear, he will give up the battle for that toy because he is well fed. It's the same with teenagers, in my opinion, because they have a lot of emotional needs, especially in this period of time. So if the parents are willing to find a little bit of empathy, that's what the kid needs. So let's say the teenager comes with a problem. They don't need solutions. They don't need any advice. They just want to be understood and listened. And with understanding them should come the empathy as well. So that's the most important thing for the parents. But it's not easy. It's a very, very hard task. But as long as we are careful about these emotional gaps that the kids are having and we are trying to fill it, it's not easy because they're gonna reject us all the time. That's something that we have to expect. But as long as we are patient, we don't judge ourselves too much because we get angry, of course, and get in fights with them. It's normal. But if we're carefully filling these emotional gaps, they'll become slowly great adults.
That sounds like a great program. It sounds like you're working with the teenagers, you're working jointly with the parents. And
Yeah.
at the end of that 10-week program, it sounds like they will have gained a lot of sense of self, some confidence, some financial skills, some time management, and maybe they will, bond with their parents just a little bit more than they would if they didn't have your program. I do want to throw this in here, right? So as I was listening to you, right, an idea popped in my head, and it's more of an experience that I've had compared
Mm.
to just a random idea, right? So I just did a very short video and I put it up on YouTube. It's about control, right? Now, when I look at it, and I was a teenager, right? I've hit on this multiple times here, is the rejection. You've hit on it, rejection. We've talked about rebelliousness, right? Now, what is that? Now, I'm going to take this back way a long time ago, and I'm going to start throwing ideas around. All right. So, like, let's say, right? Let's say if we were growing up in Revolutionary War time in America. I don't know what that would be for you guys over there, but let's say, or even before that, settling times here in America, right? As a young boy or young lady goes from childhood to adulthood, they make that little biochemical transition period, right, where the bodies change and their minds change and they start to grow into that adulthood, right? Those people, right? Let's say those were at what age? I don't know, 14 to 18 through that time period, right? Though they were accepting adult roles, like once they had gotten into that, they were functioning as full-blown adults in
Mm.
society as it existed then, right? They still had stuff to learn, but they were functioning as adults. They were becoming more heads of household. They were, some were taking on wives. Wives were, accepting husbands, right? They were moving into that adult place, right? Now, what do we have today? We have essentially like a regression of uh, like growth for kids, right? They're in school longer. They're um, living with their parents longer, right? They are even now, like we've got, in our constitution, right? You're an adult at age 18, but you can't drink or smoke or in most states own a gun until you're 21, but you can drive a car, you can go to war, you can pay taxes and, like all of those things. But they've scuttled some of the adulthood into, further on, but they've still made you responsible here. Now, put that with a teenager growing up, right? So a teenager's under control a lot longer. And that's the point I wanted to get to, is that the human body, the nature behind it is to be a kid, go through puberty, claim that adulthood, and then move on with their lives. But as a society, we've have it set up to where their kids, they're go through puberty, they're still in the household, and the parent still has control, right? A lot more control than they would have if the kid were to grow up in a society where they were more responsible, right? So you've got this, right? And I think that's where a lot of that rebelliousness comes into play, because they're trying to assert their own agency. They're trying to assert their own personality, their own livelihood, their own identity. And if they're still under the control of their parents, they can't actually do that. So I think that's where a lot of that rebelliousness gets into play, which is why I think your program's great, because it helps them find their identity, gets their confidence so they can socialize, gives them some adult time management, money management skills, but also helps the parents understand what's happening, because a lot of times parents, while they've went through this at themselves, I mean, not a lot of times, all the time, parents, you're not a parent unless you went through puberty and when I was a teenager, right? So they've went through this, but they don't self-reflect, they don't introspect, they don't take on a role. You may hear them say every once in a while, "Oh, I've done that as a kid," or like, I understand that, but they're not really walking in their kids' shoes. And I think that is where it also comes into like the control portion, right? They want the kid to do what they want them to do. The kid's trying to figure out who they are, and they feel clamped down on because they can't do that
Right.
as easy with the parents. So, excuse me. I think it's great that you have a program that will help mate the two together, and they work hand in hand.
I actually talk a lot with the parents about being self-aware of how they are treating the teenagers, because there are some I have some points to follow. It's mandatory. Show respect, don't try to control, and so on, as a parents to the teenagers, because they are trying to become their own personas. We cannot control them forever. Even though they stay with us in our own house, they still deserve respect. They deserve to develop themselves and to find out who they are. We cannot control them all the time, right? So that's something I'm talking with the parents about. Be self-aware of what you're doing. Don't judge yourself too much, because you might lose it sometimes, but be self-aware. Don't try to control them too much. More like listen, understand, and have empathy.
I mean, that's not to say that they still don't discipline their teenager, right? Like, if the teenager goes wrong, they still, like, discipline. Now, you don't want to be a doormat to a teenager, because then, then the roles will flip, right? So if a parent is obviously, we want them to have empathy, they want them to respect the teenager, you want them to, like, not have as much control over them and let them kind of, like, come up with themselves. Right now, let's say a teenager does something bad, right? Parent still has to assert that discipline, right, over the teenager, so they can learn the lesson. If they aren't ever punished for doing something that's wrong, they won't ever learn that it is bad. So when a teenager does something bad, it's important for the parent to establish that discipline, but also respect at the same time. Roles can flip, right? So if the parent, doormats, right, doesn't ever stand up for even just themselves, or stand up against what the teenager's doing, then the teenager is actually the one that's in control. So the power dynamic shifts, and the power goes to the teenager, right? And then the parent essentially could lose control. So if you keep allowing somebody to do the wrong thing and they keep getting away with it, right? Then they keep thinking they can get away with it, right? And then by the time that you want to step up and maybe squash what they're doing, it will have been too late. They'll have too much control, too much power, and the dynamic won't shift. So I think there's a good finding balance, but I think your program helps them find that balance. It sounds like it really helps them find that balance to help the teenager have that control, but also have the parent still be able to assert themselves in the relationship.
Yeah, that's true. I'm usually asking the parents if the teenagers are having younger siblings, because usually as a parent you want to have control over some situations, like drugs, alcohol, whatever, this kind of really bad ones, right? And that's when you have to come up with some rules, very specific rules that the teenager already have implemented in their brains when they start being teenagers. So I'm strongly encouraging the parents to start and pretty early with these rules, and the parents should have this, let's say, 4 topics where they don't make any compromises. You're not allowed to drink, you're not allowed to use drugs, you're not allowed to go out after 11 or whatever. It depends from parent to parent what they want to, what kind of rules they want to choose, but you should start as early as possible, and they should come into the teenagers years with this knowledge that these ones are not negotiable.
I mean, because those things are definitely important because, like, obviously you don't want kids to be getting in trouble, right? But to some degree, teenagers have to go through like trial and error. Like my analogy for the boxes, right? They run up to the box, they're looking in the box. The parent says, "Hey, do you like what's in the box?" The teenager looks back, and the parent says, "No," runs to the next box, right? And that cycle repeats, right?
Yeah.
Trial and error. They have to have. I mean, you can't have a kid not make mistakes, right? So the kid like the teenager, even anybody, you can't learn unless you make a mistake, right? There's no, you don't have confidence without fear, right? So like you've got to have mistakes to grow. So in order for that to happen, the teenager has to make mistakes, right? And I think it's important for the parent to be able to empathize with those mistakes. So like, let's say if the teenager goes out, does drugs, right? First time, does drugs. Okay. So it's important for the parent. Sure, the parent, I'm sure, will be mad, right? I mean, you can't stop that, right? The thing is the parent needs to have the empathy to be able to talk to the teenager, explain why that's bad, but also then implement a punishment that the teenager understands why it's happening, right? So if the parent is, and that's a need that a teenager needs, right? Teen need that a teenager needs, right? Is that they need to understand why the punishment is happening, right? Because and a lot of times I think that's where some parents may go wrong, is they are punishing the teenager, but they're not really helping the teenager understand why that's wrong. What they did was wrong, or what they did was bad. Now, because that happens, you'll have more chances, a higher likely chance that the teenager will repeat that same mistake before they learn their lesson, right? And sometimes if that carries over into adulthood, that can lead to, hopefully not, but it can definitely lead to like criminal act, or, like, I mean, something so simple as like a speeding ticket. I'm sure there's people on the planet that have never had a speeding ticket because they don't speed, right? You, right? And so like, but I as a teenager, I think I don't know, how many speeding tickets do I have? Like, I don't know, 14 or so, some odd tickets, right? So, yeah, see, it took me that long to learn my lesson. It took me a long time, to learn that speeding lesson, right? Um, Part of me was rebellious, and my mom, wow. I look back at all the stuff that I put her through, and I had a few years ago, I went to her and I was like, "Mom, I gotta give you a hug for that, because I definitely put you through the ringer." Because I was rebellious, right? I also had a lot of childhood trauma. So talk to me a little bit more about what else do you think teenagers need as they are transitioning from kid to young adulthood? What else do you think they got?
First, I want to stop a little bit about what you've said about making mistakes. You want for your teenager to make mistakes. It's very important. It's how they learn, as you said. At the same time, they already have when they get to these teenager years, they already have to know what is allowed and what is not. That's what responsible parents should do. At the same time, they should know what the punishment for breaking the rules is, because let's say you don't talk about anything with your teenager and they go out and make mistakes, really bad one, like I said, doing drugs, right? You really cannot do this all of a sudden. You cannot just say, oh, I'm gonna punish you with this one, because you've never talked about this. Responsible parent is talking about this with the kid ever since kindergarten. I know parents who are doing this since the kids were 2 years old, just trying to implement it. Don't do drugs, don't drink, don't smoke, don't this and that. I'm not pleading for such an exaggerating thing, but at the same time, we have to talk about them. We have to teach them a little bit about what's allowed and what is not allowed.
Absolutely, I think you're right. Because with the punishment, you're right. Right. I didn't, I'm thinking in my head like just like what actually happens like in my life, right? Um, and you're right. I think parents could offer they should be offering. I don't really like to tell people what they should and shouldn't be doing, but let's say we'll use a softer word. They could offer, right? This is what you like. If you did something wrong, the kid has to know that there is a punishment attached to that. I mean, and you're right, because like I look at adult society, right? You've got a crime, and then you've got pages upon pages of like possible punishments for just like one crime here in the United States. So as an adult, if you know the crime, and you can look up like what punishment you potentially could get for each of those crimes. So I think that is a good point that you made for teenagers to be able to understand, like like let's say if they do something wrong, but they didn't know it was wrong, or they didn't know that there was like a punishment or that it was right, then in that aspect, as long as it's not a crime, then they they the punishment should be more of an understanding why that's wrong, and then next time you'll get like whatever punishment.
Yeah, but announce before that. So next time, my kid, you're gonna get this punishment for if you're doing this again. At the same time, there are mistakes that you want to happen, and you just have to listen to it. If you're lucky enough for the kid to come to you and say, Mom, Dad, I've done this, or this happened to me, I got scared, or they live in fear like us, the parents. At the same time, these times we're living in are pretty scary sometimes. And if they come to you and tell you about it, it's like if you imagine when the kid was just learning to walk and they hurt their knees, they just look at you and try to see what's your reaction as a parent. And if you start to become panicked, the kid will be the same. If you start to laugh and say, you're fine, it was great that you tried, the kid is going to have the same relaxed manner of trying again and doing until they get better. It's the same with the mistakes for the teenagers. You want them to make mistakes, and you want to listen to their mistakes and be understanding and empathetic, and let them you sometimes you just need to trust that they're going to learn their lesson, right?
Mhm. That's part of that letting go of the control that the parent has. And then also you brought up another good point. The teenager has to have a safe place to come to talk to the parent, right? Because like if the teenager doesn't feel safe with their own parent to talk to, right? And then they may go to outside sources. So if they go to that outside source may not deliver values that are in line with what the parent wants. And in that can create turmoil, because the teenager is going to find the path of least resistance. So if the parent is very resistant to being open to talking and having that safe place with the teenager, and they go to this outside source, that outside source is going to validate the teenager more than the parent, which means that the teenager is going to start listening to the outside source. It's going to start, being validated. And in this case, right? So like, let's say if we're looking at, I don't want to get political with it, but like if we're looking at a case where a parent has a kid that is in school, and this is in the United States, I don't know how it is over there, right? So if the kid doesn't feel safe going to the parent, the kid can go in a lot of places around here, the kid can go to the teacher, right? And that teacher may not talk to the parent about what the kid has said. And then what happens is like a whole downward spiral of potential harmful behaviors and, we'll say consequences that could happen for the teenager just because they went to this outside source that is not their parent. Now, in some cases, if the parent is not, let's say if they're abusive, right? Abusive parent, right? In that case, the kid's going for safety, not understanding. And there's a big difference. I want to make the distinction between a parent that's just not willing to listen, not to create a safe space for the teenager to come if they've made a mistake, is completely different than a parent that is full on emotionally, psychologically, or physically abusive to the kid, where the kid physically cannot be safe in their presence.
Yeah, you said a very important thing. This one with a safe space. It's very important for the parents to think about a mentor for the teenager, and it's much better this way because sometimes when some things come from the outside, they might implement much better with the teenager. And the second thing is that if you as a parent are choosing a mentor, you will know that person. You can choose an uncle or an aunt or a grandfather or one of your friends that you trust. And that's how the kid can go to someone and find a safe space. Maybe they feel that they cannot speak with you about something, and they're going to that mentor, let's say. But you are still in control of who the mentor is. So that's very important because you can choose a mentor that has the same values, let's say, like yours.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely important.
Yeah.
All right. So that was a great topic on learning about what teenagers need. And I'm thinking that Coach Cornelia's Rising Stars program is a great program. She's going to link that in the description box below for you guys. If you have any questions for either of us, please don't forget to leave them in the comment box below. And don't forget to like the video and then check out our channel for more episodes coming soon.